I'll be doing a roll call, so I'll get a better sense of all of the folks that are joining. Today is the first day that we are joining for a virtual CJCC meeting with all of our members and also opening it up to the public. So today is June 26th, and it's shortly after 10 o'clock. My name is Leslie Halligan. I'm one of the district court judges in the 4th Judicial District Court and currently chairing the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Today, I will be inviting members of the public to give comment, and I'm not as familiar with the Teams platform, so there are folks that are helping in the background. Now I'm getting a bit of feedback, so I would ask that if you're not speaking, that you put yourself on mute, just as a courtesy to other participants. Certainly, if you want to speak, there's a little hand that is in your menu, likely that's next to shortly, like 2 spaces over from your mute button. If you'd like to speak, I believe that if you click on that hand, you will be brought to my attention. We will both have discussion about new grant initiative programs, and we're also going to have discussion about just general public comment. And so I will try to sort through the comments to make sure that we get you in the right place for your comments. But bear with me a little bit because, as I said, this platform is a little bit new to me. So welcome. I'll begin with our roll call. And several of our members, perhaps because of summer and because it's a beautiful day outside, they're not able. I'm sure they have conflicts that aren't fun related. I'm sure they're work related. But nonetheless, Alex Beal, one of our Justice Court judges, is unable to be here today. Is Alex Hall with us? So I don't see Alex yet, but if she joins in, please send a quick little message. Amy Sings in the Timber.
Here.
Thank you, Amy. Angie Bakken. Ann Douglas. Ann Miller. So remember, if you're on mute, you'll have to unmute yourself. Ann Miller. I see an AM, so I think Ann might be here. Bart Hope. Bart here. I'm not hearing that, but I do see a BH, so we'll see about that. I might come back. Becca Go. Brian Kellerman. Chris Lounsbury. So Rebecca, I see you. So
yes, I'm here.
Yes,
I didn't get to my mute very fast.
I know that's a hardship along the way. Yeah. I don't see Brian, but I know that Kim is here, so we'll get to Kim. Chris Lounsbury. Courtney Callahan. Deshane Barnett wasn't able to attend, but Ann Douglas might be present. Dale Bickle is unable to attend. Dave Conway.
Judge Halligan, pardon me for interrupting. It appears that some of our members aren't able to get unmuted quick enough, and same with perhaps once we get to the attendees, we might need to do a general unmute so that people can respond. And I'll see if we can ask Sarah Quinn to assist us with a general unmute while we do this process.
All right, well, I'm trying to look at screens, so I do a little check, but my screens only go so far as well. So if you see someone that I've not seen, I'll rely on you to make sure that we have them checked, and I'll review the attendees perhaps midway through. So Dave Conway, Aaron Pien can't attend, but Teresa Williams might be joining us today.
Present, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Ethan Lerman, one of our municipal court judges. Jason White, the chief of the city police. James Kitchen.
Here.
All right, was that Who's
That was Scott.
Scott Hoffman? Thank you, Scott. So you're here on his behalf. James Kitchen, Highway Patrol, soon to be retiring. Jason Kowalski. Jennifer Striano.
Jennifer
Jenny-
Striano, sorry, Judge. Jennifer Striano just sent in a text saying she's been called to court. She's going to try and get Michelle to come, and not sure if either will be able to make it today, but it just happened. So they send their apologies.
Jenny Daniel. Jody Faircloth. John Engen, our mayor, was unable to attend today. Jordan Kilby at the County Attorney's Office. Joseph Thagard, Assistant U.S. Attorney. Julie Merritt. Kathleen Jenks, Municipal Court Judge. Keithy Worthington, City Attorney's Office. Kim Leah. Kim, I see you. You don't even have to unmute. Great, thank you. Kristen Pabst, our county attorney, she was unable to attend today. Landy Holloway, our other Justice Court judge, is also unable to attend. Lori Francis was unable to attend, but Becca Go is here on her stead, and we've called Becca's name. Lori Pope. Lori, I see you.
I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Marty Ludeman from the University Police. Maylin Smith. I see an MS that perhaps is Maylin. Michelle Lide, called to court, maybe appearing. S.K. Rossi.
Here.
Great, thank you. Scott Hoffman on behalf of Chief White. Scott, you're here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Shane Vanetta is our alternate district court judge. I'm not certain if he's able to attend. Is Judge Vanetta on? Shirley Faust was unable to attend. Sue Wilkins and Maria McLean are here on behalf of Missoula Correctional Services.
Yes,
Here.
we're
The
here.
benefit
Thank
of having your video on is I can see you.
you.
So welcome. So I'm quite certain that other folks have joined. I see Brenda Desmond joined as a guest. Welcome, Brenda. I'm sure there are others. It looks like there's 19 folks in addition to the people that I have. And I have one person whose hand is up, and that's S.K. Rossi. S.K., did you have something you wanted to mention?
Nope, that was just me saying I was here.
All right, perfect. That's a great way. So if I read your name and you weren't able to get to your mute button, feel free to put your hand up. And if I see any hands, I certainly will call on you. And Ann Miller, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So with that, I'm quite certain that Kristen Martin, who's our coordinator at CJCC, she'll be double checking the lists of folks. Our IT folks have a better review of actually who's joined us. And Amy, thank you for joining as well. And we also have our MacArthur Grant coordinator, Tom Eberly, joining. So Tom, people haven't been introduced, but welcome. Thank you for joining us. So we would like to begin the meeting with the Acknowledgement of Country. So we'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional homelands of the Kootenai, Salish, and Pend Oreille, and to acknowledge those tribes' contributions to the area both historically and currently. With that, I'm going to begin our business meeting, and I hope that all of you have received an agenda. The purpose of our meetings is to strengthen the criminal justice system through collaboration and efficiency and try to ensure our public safety and justice. And we have some fabulous initiatives that are moving forward. We have our grant initiatives that Kristen will review with us briefly. But the purpose of today's meeting is really to obtain more information from committee members and also the public to address ongoing needs in our criminal justice system to make sure that we are treating all people fairly and appropriately, and that our process is fair and equitable. And so we always have room to grow. So I'm hoping that you all came with some good ideas about areas that you've been concerned about that we should be tackling. And also, Kristen will give us kind of a review, and I hope that you'll be proud of the accomplishments that we've made thus far. So Kristen, why don't you begin with regard to where we're at now to set the stage.
Thank you, Judge Halligan, and thank you everyone for coming along. I know a lot of you know about our strategies and initiatives, but I thought that I would give a little update on what's going on. For those of you who don't know me, who might be on the call, my name is Kristen Jordan, and I'm the manager of the Missoula County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council Division. Our division was created to facilitate and support criminal justice reforms, and it consists of 2 staff members, not including myself, who are grant funded. We have a data analyst and a public safety assessment coordinator, and I'll explain her position here a bit later. The criminal justice reforms we're working on are data-driven approaches that rely on collaboration between elected officials, citizens of the community, and agency executives, so a lot of decision makers. The reforms are meant to increase efficiencies, be based in current best practices, and focus strongly on public safety. Our department got a kickstart to addressing criminal justice reforms through the award of a grant from the MacArthur Foundation's Safety and Justice Challenge. The Safety and Justice Challenge gave Missoula County $700,000 in November of 2018 to work on cross-agency reforms that focus on safely reducing our jail population and addressing ethnic and racial disparities. The MacArthur Foundation did a stress test on our local criminal justice system in early 2019, which is a bit of a gap analysis of where we could start making improvements. They also facilitated something called a sequential intercept mapping project, which looks at the various places that citizens enter the criminal justice system and identifying what mental health resources are available at each of those entry points. The sequential intercept mapping project is also a bit of a gap analysis, and it came with some recommendations. I'm going to go through the recommendations identified in both the stress test and the sequential intercept mapping project to provide a brief explanation of what they're meant to address and what the progress and challenges of each might be. This brief highlight of the current recommendations is meant to provide you all with context of the work that's being done and potential work to be done with this grant renewal application process that we're here to talk about today. I would like to ask, if possible, that you might save your questions until the end, where I'll be happy to answer any of them just to speed things along a bit. All the documents that I'm talking about can be found on our CJCC website, which is under the Missoula County website. So with that, I will get started. So like I said, the MacArthur Foundation came in and gave a stress test, and these are what they identified. With the first strategy that we received grant money for was to develop case processing efficiencies. Basically, this initiative is meant to reduce the time it takes cases to move through district court. We're developing a plan through interviews with district court judges and clerks of court and assessments to create a new policy that will ensure those with felony charges awaiting trial in custody have a reduced length of stay pre-trial. This is only to reduce the pre-trial time, not sentencing time. This work is ongoing with the draft policy hopefully to be ready for review by the end of summer. A second initiative, sorry, this is strategy 1, that was initiative 1. The second initiative under strategy 1 is the implementation of a jail review team. This group has been meeting weekly for about 6 months, though most recently through email. Our department generates a list of those currently sitting in jail under a pretrial status, meaning they've not yet been found guilty, for review by this group that consists of our chief public defender, a city prosecutor, a county attorney representative, a representative from the jail, and our Western Bureau Chief of Probation and Parole. Upon review, this team upon review of each defendant, the team works to unanimously make a recommendation to the sitting judge for early release of the defendant. This group has identified a lot of procedural issues, which will be put forward for consideration and discussion by the CJCC to improving efficiencies. But we haven't had a lot of luck in making recommendations for those folks for early release due to different views on who should be considered and why. And a lot of time it relates to public safety. So we have done a lot of good work and we have room to improve in this space as well, but we've got a dedicated group of folks who are looking at our jail population every week. Initiative 3 under strategy 4 is to reduce the time from preliminary hearing to arraignment. This has been done through collaboration between Justice Court and, oops, a little typo there, District Court. So the time from initial appearance to preliminary hearing for those in custody in a pretrial status has been reduced to 10 days, which is down from 14 days. So basically it means we've reduced the average length of stay for folks in this case by 4 days at our local jail. Initiative 4 under this strategy was to reduce the time for assigning defense counsel, which is something that we did straight away. Wasn't really much of a problem there, but we are monitoring this to make sure that folks who need a public defender are getting one really quickly. Under strategy 2, this is implementing front-end jail diversion with prosecution. So this is a long-winded way of saying that our county attorney's office has created this amazing program called Calibrate, which is a diversion program. The program is developed to assist first-time non-violent offenders to avoid court and potential criminal records. Each participant has a treatment plan specific to their needs and related to their charges. Upon successful completion, all charges are dropped. The strategy is complete. There are data metrics established and reporting to track the progress and efficiencies of the program, and they currently have about 28 people in the program and have already graduated 2. So it's going really well. The third strategy is increasing the use of our public safety assessment tool. And before, when I mentioned that we have a staff member who's our public safety assessment coordinator, this is where her job plays a part. So this project relates to providing judges with additional information about a defendant's risk of rearrest or failure to appear if the defendant is released pre-trial. The tool provides a score based on these potential risks that a judge may use in decision-making of whether or not to have somebody be released pre-trial or await their trial in jail. Montana has implemented a pilot project to roll this risk tool out, and then the MacArthur Foundation has provided us support in rolling it out here in Missoula as well. So it was kind of a 2-in-1. So the pilot project is being implemented in 6 counties across the state. There are concerns about how the data is being captured across all the sites, of which is then being used to run performance metrics. So our department has been working closely with the Office of Court Administrators to address our concerns about the data integrity. Currently, we do feel that the data collected is not robust enough to inform an accurate account of how the pilot project is going. So it's more about how the project's running rather than necessarily how the tool works. And so we're working really closely with DCA to keep that going. Strategy 4 is providing outreach and education about Indigenous cultures and racial disparities. So the first initiative is to hire a Native American liaison. We had a Native American liaison, Ivan McDonald, who right before COVID took another job with All Nations Health Center. And due to COVID, we weren't able to really rehire somebody very quickly because they can't get into the jail. But we did just confirm a hire yesterday. Roger, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget his last name, LaPlante, is a recent MSW graduate, and he'll be joining All Nations as the Native American liaison. So he'll sit on the CJCC, he'll be working in the jail, he'll sit on Judge Halligan's new treatment court team, and hopefully we'll be able to plug him in wherever he can fit, which would be great. Initiative 2 under this strategy is to offer trauma-informed training, and then Initiative 3 is to also offer implicit bias training to law enforcement. This has been one that we were working on, and prior to COVID had a good process in place, and then COVID kind of derailed it. So we need to regroup on that. We do have money available to provide trainings. We'd like to run a training where everybody could come as just an effort to at least try and provide some education around trauma-informed implicit bias, though research does show that these trainings alone are not effective enough at addressing these issues on a system-wide level. Quickly, strategy 5 is implementing the recommendations of that sequential intercept mapping project. So that's the one where we're looking at the intersectionality of mental health and criminal justice. This has been, we're really relying on the help of other groups. So particularly, so some of the things they want us to do is establish metrics and data sharing. They want us to increase the continuity of healthcare between the emergency room and the jail. They want us to implement housing and homeless strategy interventions intervention strategies, work on creating a comprehensive behavioral health screening strategy, and improve the intensity and availability of care for behavioral health. So a couple things going on in this space that we've helped out with is our department did just submit an application to the state for a mobile crisis team. It was there are a lot of people involved in getting this off the ground, and just it's being submitted under my department, and we're hoping we win that grant so we can have a mobile crisis team on the ground by September. Another thing that we're helping out with is providing licenses for the homeless management information system, and it's basically a coordinated entry system that allows just a continuum of care for people through healthcare, housing, or any needs that they might have. So we've bought some licenses for different agencies, and we could look at buying more because it is a data sharing platform, and it ensures that people who need the help are getting a coordinated effort. We're working with the At-Risk Housing Coalition, the Behavioral Health COAD Group, the Justice Alliance for Behavioral Health, and the Strategic Alliance for Improved Behavioral Health, because this isn't necessarily our wheelhouse, the mental health piece, but there are a lot of people working in this space who can help us implement Strategy 5. And with that, I am going to end my update on the existing strategies that we're working on with the money that we received in November. And then we're going to turn the conversation toward we're being invited to reapply for the MacArthur grant. It's going to be for most likely another $700,000. And we want to find out from you all where and how this money could be best spent, keeping in mind that the focus of the Safety and Justice Challenge is to safely reduce jail populations. And by safely, we're looking at community safety and defendant safety, and also addressing ethnic and racial disparities. So I'll hand it back over to you, Judge.
So thank you very much. So Kristen definitely gave us a quick overview. And so if you were typing, you probably couldn't type that fast. If there are questions with regard to any of those initiatives or kind of reclarification that you'd like to have done, please raise your hand on your screen and I'll try to identify that. But as she said, the objectives that we have in place, it is our plan to continue forward with those. But there are a number of areas, certainly some that I've identified and are mentioned on your agenda, and others. So I would love to hear from all of you about dreams and aspirations that you see, problems that you might see in your work that you think are systematic and really need a systems change to help improve some of these objectives. So I see Kim thinking. One of the objectives I've been thinking about for a long time is trying to do more of that process evaluation. So obviously I see people a lot in both kind of predisposition, so they are new charges, haven't been sentenced. We're already trying to look at reducing their time in the process and also then reducing their time in custody. But for those people that have been convicted, many of the folks that we have are on probation violations. And for a long time, we have been struggling with how to figure out how to process those people as well in a reasonable fashion and a fair fashion. And so that's an area that I think needs a little bit of attention. And I certainly don't have the data behind all of that to support how best to research that. But that's just one thing I would throw out. And I don't know if other folks would like to both evaluate those timeframes and see if there can be some movement or better processing to make sure that folks who have been convicted, they're alleged to have violated their probation and they have probation violation and petitions to revoke pending, how we can, streamline and more effectively deal with those cases as well. So I know that others have things, so please raise your hand. I'm happy to call on you if you have ideas. I have kind of gone through and I've hovered over all the initials I can see on my screen. So some of the folks that I called their names and I know that you're here. And again, I'm just going to leave the roll call to the folks on the kind of back side, the tech side. But if you have something that you'd like to raise, I think, Rebecca, you have been working with Lori Francis, and I had attended kind of a brief meeting for discussion to help join with some medical and legal issues. I wondered if you wouldn't mind addressing that or bringing that to the group's attention.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about kind of what we're talking about at Partnership Health Center, which is really implementing a meta legal partnership model at PHC, with the hopes of kind of moving it also beyond our clinic walls to improve access for everyone in the community. So just to talk a little bit about that, and I always abbreviate medical legal partnership down to MLP. So that will be the acronym that I just moved to using. So I think that many of you are aware that, but like health centers really are founded on the belief that in order for a person to reach optimal health and well-being, we also have to address the social factors that impact their health. And at PHC, we have a number of programs that are kind of aimed at addressing these gaps for our nearly 16,000 patients that we see annually. And kind of much like healthcare before Medicaid expansion, a lot of access to legal services for low to moderate income Montanans it's very difficult to get. As I'm sure is no surprise to anybody on this call, and nearly half of all low-income Montanans have kind of one or more legal concerns that go unaddressed. And you might not be surprised, but unaddressed legal concerns can actually result in a number of health issues, including worsening mental health and the exacerbation of chronic conditions. So if you think, for example, about a patient who might keep presenting in the ER with severe asthma or just has worsening mental health conditions because of fear of an eviction, all of that is something that could be addressed by an MLP, like an attorney. Like in the case of the asthma, like this is a true story. Like we see PHC patients present at the ER with worsening asthma frequently, and they cannot be addressed in a primary care. And you kind of look a little deeper, and it's because of mold in a rental unit, or a person who is facing eviction and increasing stress, and like they can't quite get to where they need to be because they're worried about entering homelessness, or a person who is in recovery and can't find housing, and so they might, they're living on the streets where it's harder to remain sober. And all of those things are kind of where we can see an MLP model coming in. So an MLP is really just, it brings a lawyer in to be a part of the care team. So like they would actually be sort of like at PHC, we have care teams that consist of behavioral health and dental and primary care. And then it's just adding kind of legal services to that care team. And to make this model really robust is kind of part of what we are hoping to do, is to bring in an MLP coordinator and also a lawyer kind of on contract to help with that advice, to help with the legal side of things. And then that would really have three main goals. And the first part would be to kind of educate staff and patients about kind of what these health harming legal needs are. Because often if you're not used to thinking of them as legal needs, you won't identify them as legal needs. We've had our old medical director said, like, kind of once he was starting to think about it, he had 3 patients in one day who had a health harming legal need who could really just benefit from some legal advice. So there's no shortage of need there. And then the other part would be to really implement a robust medical legal partnership model, like figuring out all the processes so that we can truly embed legal services into the clinical care team. And then kind of the bigger piece of this is to embed it within the community too, by having like ideally more robust like pro bono services. We know that MLSA does a lot for pro bono services in here, and we also know that the need for like full representation is a lot of need for full representation, and that often kind of younger attorneys who might take on some of this work go unpaid, and they kind of work in isolation. And what PHC can offer is kind of like a full support. So we have primary care, we have dental services, we have behavioral health, so that like if it was, we could figure out a way to offer support in all those areas and legal services, so that people may feel, and I don't know if that's true yet, more willing to take on some of these difficult cases that sometimes go without representation or that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we're thinking at PHC. We've received a small grant from the Montana Healthcare Foundation to help with the planning. And I mean, if there was more support from the CJCC, I think that could help us really create a more robust program.
So I see a question from SK Rossi. SK, is your question related to this topic or a newer topic?
Different topic. It's more of a comment than a question.
Okay, so I'll just turn to you in a minute. I'll ask if folks have questions about Becca's presentation or whether or not. So Chantel, were you going to say something?
Yes.
Hey.
So maybe you're a bit frozen. If there's any other comments while we wait. We'll come back to you. Other comments or questions? So I was going to kind of ask Ann Miller about the kind of the holistic work that's being done at the tribe. And it seems to me in part that that work is very similar to the legal medical kind of model. But Ann, maybe you could tell me more about what you're doing and how it may be similar, and whether or not you think that a similar type of program or maybe an expanded program would be helpful. I don't know if the tech people can help you unmute. I'm trying to figure out if I can do that. These are the challenges with technology. My apologies.
And did you perhaps hit a mute button on your end? It looks like it might be on your end because it doesn't look like there's any. Okay.
Nope, we can't hear you now, but we can read your lips. While you continue to see if maybe you can get it to work, Maylin, how's your mute and unmute button?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
I
can hear you.
reloaded. It wasn't working initially, so I've reloaded. So Anne, is your microphone maybe not working? It worked yesterday, but.
And we could hear you at the beginning of the meeting, so maybe, yeah, reload, reboot.
Yeah.
So Maylin, while she works on that, I know that you're very familiar with the program as well. Do you want to give us kind of your thoughts?
So the, you know, Anne started the program up there about 5 years ago in the Defender's Office, and it really is a holistic model. So it's a client-centered approach. It's taking the client and figuring out what the client's needs are, and then trying to provide all those services to the client. We've expanded that in an area of trying to bring in some of the prosecution work to use that same model. So we are trying to address underlying issues that get them into the justice system from a variety of points.
And are you finding some success in like lower levels of you know, recidivism and re-entry into the system?
Well, I guess I would have to say COVID has probably skewed all the statistics because we have really low levels right now, but that's because we were diligently trying to keep people out of incarceration as well. So I don't know that we can say that it's all because of the services, but one of the things that I do see as a huge difference is there is a more community-based policing approach already in the tribal system. So they're much more inclined to try and get mental health services for somebody they pick up rather than charge them with anything. And I think that's a huge difference.
Do you have thoughts at all about the public health or PHC's thoughts about kind of this medical legal model?
Well, I think they're so intertwined. It's not just the medical and legal. I mean, unless you're going to do medical, but it's the social services, it's the housing, it's the education. So it's that whole package of services that they need. And that's why the client-centered model, where you take the client and figure out what their needs are and trying to address those, is looking more long-range change to individuals.
Okay. So Chantel, if you're able to unmute, I know your hand is up. Comments about this are new ideas. So Chantel might be reloading. While she does that, SK, do you want to dive in with your comments or concerns or new ideas?
I'm kind of confused about the format, like where we are on the agenda. Are we going through each of these things listed under discussion of new initiatives?
Yes, and unfortunately I didn't turn my page, so I jumped ahead, but the next one I will discuss is the Native American Diversion Program. And
Okay,
I'll
great.
get back on track.
Yeah, and I'll just,
apologies.
when we get to the topics and ideas piece, I think that's more appropriate for the comments I want to make. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what was happening.
Okay, I'll try to be a little more agenda focused. All right, so I know that Chantel has some comments to make, and hopefully at some point she'll be activated and can do that. Chantel, are you with us yet?
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So this was a question that went back to Rebecca with the medical legal model. Wondering if you foresee that intersecting with family law cases. So I'm thinking about custody, I'm thinking about dissolution, all of which of course can impact your health and is quite stressful, but also it's wrapped up in lots of cases where there's power and control issues and sometimes abuse issues in relationships. So just wondering what your guardrails around that might be, what that might look like, or if you're not even there yet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I would say that we are not even there yet, and that we would really rely heavily on like Chantel and others who were kind of, because we had that broad community meeting. I don't even remember when it was, February or March, sometime before COVID, when we all were able to be together to help us design the program with those types of things in mind. Because we definitely wouldn't want to break any trust or, you know, it's meant to build up the system more, not fragment it. That kind of addresses your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the PHC kind of thoughts? So we'll add that on our list and then discuss kind of prioritizing what things the group would like to tackle moving forward. And I'll move back to the agenda. So there were a few topics that I was aware of. So let's move to the Native American Diversion Program. And Kristen, did we have a particular person who was going to present that?
Me.
Perfect. I thought that might be. So feel free.
So this is an idea that is still formulating that I'd like to run past the group. Since the grant really wants us to focus on safely reducing our jail population and addressing ethnic and racial disparities, and also currently our jail population sits anywhere between 15 and 20% Native American, though our community consists of 3%, there is definitely an overrepresentation of Native Americans in the criminal justice system. So an idea I'd like to put together and talk about is a diversion program specific to Native Americans. what it might include is the Native American liaison being a part of that. So reaching out to people in the jail and in the community. We've been talking a little bit about kind of, I guess what Becca was talking about, but at all nations and specific to Native Americans, so they can come and get culturally relevant medical and legal assistance in one place. And so it would tap into existing services because we could use all nations, but I think that we would need to write into the grant either the Native American liaison position again or hire, I guess maybe just writing it in again. And so it would also include having a case manager who could ensure that folks are being looked after and maybe assisting with a treatment plan and court dates and information that they need to manage their criminal justice process. But so it would touch a little bit on what Becca was talking about and also touch a little bit on what's happening in the county attorney's office, but specifically for Native American populations, and ideally trying to keep folks out of the system to begin with. But right now we would be working within the system trying to help folks become not criminal justice involved. So it's kind of still a big grand idea, but it does tick the two big boxes that the MacArthur Foundation is looking for in safely reducing the populations and addressing ethnic and racial disparities. And our current strategies have not been enough to address ethnic and racial disparities. And I would really like to see some strategies that are touching on that. I don't know what else they might be. Hopefully everybody's got some ideas, but that's my idea in a nutshell.
So thoughts or comments about, I guess, a more focused approach, very much like the PHC and tribal work that's being done already at the Salish and Kootenai, looking at more individual needs to try to address those. So Senator Sands, you have your hand up. Do you have a comment?
I do, thanks. I find that idea really exciting as we're working at the state level trying to think about how to reduce our populations. I know like in the women's prison, 30% are Native American women. We've got to back that up. So I think this would be great to have model projects that are trying to look at how we can reduce people from getting into that system by addressing their needs earlier while we're here at the county and the local level, because it feeds into the entire system. But if we don't start dealing with some of the prevention and early interventions, we're going to just continue to stack people up in the state and the federal system. So for me, that's one of my highest priorities, is try to see what we can do to address the disproportionate number of Native Americans in the system. So anything we can do or help at the state level as we work on these issues, I'd love to be a full partner. I don't know if that means trying to get some state funding to supplement some of the program needs that you're looking at, but I'm very excited about that and just want to weigh in as being fully in support, and will do anything I can to help you. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you for your support. So one of our sheriff's supervisors, Rich, your assistant sheriff, is that correct? You should know your title.
It's actually, it's Robert Kennedy from the sheriff's office.
Oh, okay.
For
all right, sorry. Okay.
Hey, I just don't have anything. I just wanted to let you know we were represented, but I got to check out for the change of plea there in courtroom 3. So I'll
okay.
be hanging up.
All right.
Thanks
so much. Yep. Thank you, Robert. So I have Rich Marcelli with a hand up, but that must have been Robert. And Senator Sands has her hand up, but I will just lower her hand. I think I can figure that out. Other folks that have ideas. So perhaps again, I'd look to some of the folks that are already involved in addressing some of the disparate contact. Anybody have some ideas about ways to tackle these issues? Anyone not in support of moving forward on this? Again, we'll leave it and perhaps be able to go through and kind of vote on items that have been raised. I don't see hands nor comments, but feel free to try to do either of those and I'll call on you. The next item that we had on the agenda was again what I had briefly introduced about process evaluation. So As Kristen had mentioned in her overall view, we had as one of our objectives looking at processing of cases. And we have identified a few areas and addressed a few areas. So one was the filing of cases in justice court and the delays in getting them to district court, and also the confusion about hearings and conditions of release. So that's been briefly addressed. But we have not really done a full process evaluation, and those are very expensive. I don't know if we want to devote our energy to a full process evaluation. But again, I do think there are areas and maybe some snapshots of having a person who knows more than I do about kind of assessing those timelines and giving us some better guidance about that. I do think that we continue to struggle. COVID, of course, has, like everything else, thrown a curveball. So our trial scheduling has been delayed. Our first jury trials will start in July. But for those of you who don't know the court system so well, since kind of probably March through July, we've been doing hearings and bench trials, but we have not been doing jury trials because of the need to have 6 feet of separation and to really have no more than 10 people in a room. The bare basics for a jury trial is about 25 people. So we have now kind of seating charts in all the courtrooms. We will go forth with our first jury trial. If that is not successful in the courthouse building, we'll likely be moving those to another larger space, whether that's the fairgrounds or a hotel or something, just to get larger rooms to actually do jury trials. So that's put a delay in the process, but there are other things that I think systematically have some problems. And so I would be in favor of trying to look at that. I don't know if other people have experienced that in your work. Any thoughts about areas of concern, or maybe I'm looking too critically at the timeframes? So I saw Jennifer Striano pop in. Jennifer, what are your thoughts? Because obviously you see a lot of folks coming through the system. If you're still available, I'd be interested in what your thoughts might be.
This is Michelle Lyday. Jennifer had to step away for a court proceeding.
All right. So, briefly, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
If you're asking, do I think there should be a process evaluation? I would agree that there does need to be some type of evaluation. I don't know that we need to go to the full expense of a complete process evaluation, but I think it would be good to have somebody look from the outside and determine how the process is working with the changes that have been put into place. As you said, the COVID pandemic has created a situation where I think it's difficult to analyze that process. And because of that, I don't know how effective or useful the data is going to be. But ultimately, I think we do need somebody to look at the things we have in place as far as that process and determine how effective it's been. I just don't know that we have much outcome data right now to actually get much feedback, unfortunately, because of the changes in the last 3 or 4 months.
So thank you for that. Any other comments or thoughts? So Sue or Maria, do you have any thoughts at all? You see people on pretrial supervision for long periods of time. Obviously, those are services that are great to have available. I know they're not necessarily available at all levels, and I think that's hope that we can make pretrial supervision or at least alternatives to detention available at all levels. Any thoughts about process evaluations or ideas?
This is Sue. I have found it very interesting and very I'm very supportive of a lot of what has been said in regards to all these different program things are talking about case management issues and trying to get referrals, to defendants to referral sources and then have their needs addressed and things. And that's always been part of the major goal with our pretrial program that started many years ago, is if people got those kinds of resources during that time period, that helped them in the long run, even with their court case. And you're right, we have some cases, that are quickly taken care of, but we have other cases that are under our pretrial supervision program for an extended period of time. And that allows, when that happens, it gives us some more time to be able to find help in a defendant with any kinds of needs that they want. They're not necessarily court ordered, but they are needs that are clear, whether it be housing, we can refer to Teresa on some of those kinds of things, or they have mental health, they ask for help, we can get them to the mental health facilities, the resources, and let them allow those kinds of choices. So anyway, yes, we do see, we'd like to see those kinds of case management and referral systems done as quickly as possible, because those needs are really what has brought so many people into the criminal justice system.
Great, thank you. So we have a guest, Jen Molloy. Jen, do you have comments? I think you're still on mute, so I'm just going to let you know that.
That's
There you
helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Hi, I'm kind of new to this conversation, so I'm kind of just catching up. But and a lot of what I've been learning about what's going on around the nation and is really about these more informal processes, and just wondering about if our community is interested in thinking about restorative justice or different forms of community accountability, that maybe we're backing up from such a focus on just, the needs of the person who committed the harm or the offender, but also considering kind of the greater needs of justice, and if, what that would look like in our community, how would we bring in those who have been harmed, how we would even, think about our interactions with police. So kind of backing up those points of contact with our justice system to consider, more diversion even at the law enforcement level. So just maybe some things to start to consider, and how that would work.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comment. So we are working a bit, and Kristen mentioned trying to get better training. So there are many entry points into the criminal justice system, and we do recognize that law enforcement is key with regard to entry into the system, community members as well, and we want to make certain that community members feel safe. So bringing in training and bringing in education and bringing in other models and folks that can help to strengthen the diversion services and kind of diversion decisions, I think it will be very helpful. And I'm hoping that some of the training that we have found, although it's pretty minimal at this point, will be helpful. But I appreciate your comment, and I know that we are looking to educate all of us. I mean, it's not just law enforcement, it's really the whole community about how best to support each other and, have a kind of civilized and safe community.
Pardon, excuse me, Judge. It appears that some folks do not have the capacity to raise their hand. We're trying to figure it out, but I know Teresa Williams wanted to mention something, and Lori Pope as well. So Lori's been actually raising her real hand.
All right. So Lori, I just saw your real hand. I'm sorry if I missed it before. So why don't you let us know your thoughts?
Actually, sorry, I might just say Teresa wanted to comment, I think, on Becca's. So it might be good to finish that one up and then start with Lori, because I think Lori's got a new topic.
Is that right, Lori? Okay. So Teresa.
I'm sorry, guys. It feels like we're jumping back. I did put my note in the chat box. Really, Becca, it's just around ensuring that we are, like, how does this fit in with St. Pat's? Because I know St. Patrick Hospital just launched the first hospital-based MLP program in Montana, and we are launching that with our FUSE population and working with Montana Legal Services. And for those of you that don't know, FUSE are those folks that have been identified as frequent users of the crisis system. And so, yeah, Becca, I just want to see if you guys have had any partnerships with them in launching this program at Partnership Health Center.
Yeah, and we have had conversations with them, and Montana Healthcare Foundation is also funding their pilot, as you know, and so they've also brought us together. So the short answer is yes, we are talking to them, and also I think that this model that we're hoping to develop will still have MLSA as a very close partner, and also we hope to have either an attorney in-house or just an MLP coordinate actually at PHC, because I do feel like that's kind of an important part of things for improving for the real true MLP model. And then also the bigger piece of bringing a lot of community partners together to really expand capacity for just so there's more access in the community through, you know, more pro bono attorneys. And I know that's not like as easy as we hope, but just kind of looking at how we can come up with more of a community solution to a community problem rather than just having it based in one hospital or one health center or at All Nations. And I think those are all great, like just cross communication would be improved. So
great, thank you. Yep.
All right, so it sounds to me like some form of this project would be very helpful, given kind of the multitudes of kind of conversations that we've had. I finally figured out the meeting chat. So again, my apologies for being a little bit slow on the technology. So Lori, you have something to add, and SK Rossi has something to add. SK has been waiting for a long time, and Lori, are you able to stay on for a while as well? Okay, so SK, why don't you join in with your comments or new idea, and then I'll turn to Lori.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to hear about that legal services project. First of all, that's super great. And I wanted to say really quickly that I'm really appreciative of this council. The work and dedication of the folks on this council has been kind of a bit of a beacon when other communities have been much less responsive to the changes in the criminal justice system that need to be made. So I just wanted to say thank you. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge that the conversation around the criminal legal system is changing quickly, and the demand for change is becoming louder and louder. And that's especially true in communities of color, including Indigenous communities and Black communities and other communities of color. And it's my understanding from the beginning of the presentation that part of the requirement of the MacArthur Foundation grant is a focus on racial justice initiatives and racial justice work within the criminal legal system. And, you know, since the killing of George Floyd and since the uprisings have been taking place across the country, including here in Missoula, it's been on my mind more and more that, and I apologize for being so blunt about this, but how white this council is. And I think that all of the initiatives we're discussing are wonderful, but I don't think that those conversations should be happening without the input of Black folks, Indigenous folks, and people of color. And in terms of changing that, I don't have a exact example of what that could look like, but I think it would be, it behooves us to actually look at the makeup of this council, try to identify some redundancies in terms of representation from different sectors, and think about where we can ask people to step back and be replaced by the voices of the people most directly impacted by the system, which are folks of color. I know that Missoula has a very active Black Lives Matter and racial justice organizing community. I think someone from that community would make sense to be on this council. And I know that there are other racial justice organizations and civil rights organizations who would love to have a say in this stuff. And beyond that, I think we need to start finding community members who are representative of communities of color to start participating in these conversations. It can't just be a subcommittee that is focused on racial justice and made up of people of color. Those voices need to be in every single conversation. And I think we need to start talking about how that works. And I appreciate all the work that's being done. I think the projects presented are great, but I think honestly they barely scratch the surface of what Black and Brown and Indigenous people are asking for in terms of change. And we need to start digging a little deeper into what they're asking for and start creating programs that are reflective of those requests and demands, and not just of what we think is best as a majority white committee.
So SK, thanks for the comments. I believe that I can't imagine that there's really any opposition to that. part of our struggle has been, of course, finding people who are interested, finding people of color. Obviously, many people are coming to the forefront. And so I'm hoping that we will have the opportunity to invite people who have that interest and can bring their opinions and their suggestions. So if you have, it sounds to me like you may have some connections within these groups. If you wouldn't mind forwarding even just some contact points to us. I know that we have a number of ad hoc representatives that could be added to the commission. And certainly we could even expand the number of those folks or substitute in, you know, as you said, kind of diversify the core group. So if you have any folks, and I'll ask Kristen to start her outreach as well, because I'm sure that she's got sources that can reach out to other groups, but I would certainly appreciate it. I would wholeheartedly recommend and want those folks here. We hope that, you know, with some of the folks from all nations that we have some representation, and with Maylin and Anne from the Salish tribe. But again, if there are other folks that would like to join the conversation on a formal basis or be members, I don't see a problem in trying to add those concerns. I just don't think that, as you said, any of us can really know what the issues are that we need to address.
Yeah, I'm happy to put together a list of folks who I think would be willing to serve and have some of those conversations myself if it's helpful. And again, you know, I would just encourage us who are white on this council to think about whether or not our points of view are represented by other people, and maybe make space if they feel comfortable doing so.
Okay.
I might just add as an aside that we're working closely. Oops. Those are two people.
Hi, this is Iku Beck. I'm with Montana Women Vote. There actually has been interest and multiple natives reaching out to your group asking to join the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. We just haven't, no one has followed up with us.
Okay. So is there?
There's already been interest.
Great.
And we've been emailed, and Laurel has emailed Kristen multiple times to try to get us connected, but we just aren't on any of the email lists. But there are people who are interested and have been trying to engage. We just have been excluded.
Okay, well, we'll be sure to reach out. And I don't know if you have the chat ability, but if you could just put in a few email addresses, then that would be helpful for me, just to make certain we do reach out to the right people.
Judge, I might just mention, and Teresa put it in the chat, about the Learn Initiative. We are working with the folks from the Learn Initiative, which I don't know if everybody's heard about or not yet, but it's the city is basically commissioning a research project on ethnic and racial disparities across the spectrum. And so a few of us from the CJCC have been at these meetings figuring out how we can help, even if it's just with financial means. But we are definitely interested in bringing on board anybody who's interested. The idea with the initial setup of the CJCC is we kind of wanted folks who could go back to their agencies and make decisions on behalf of their agencies. But we're definitely going to review our bylaws in about a year's time and reevaluate how it's worked in the first year. So definitely want to keep communication going with anybody from the BIPOC community who wants to be a part of this team.
All right, so so we've talked a bit. Any other comments? I don't see hands up. Jen, your hand is up still. Did you have an additional comment, Jen Molloy?
Oh, no, I didn't, but I guess I was just going to put something in the chat that just that I teach at the School of Social Work at UM, and I would be happy to come present. I didn't feel like it was the space to really go into what my ideas around restorative justice and transformative justice, but I would be happy to present to you all at some point if you are ever interested in learning more and considering what that could look like.
Great, thank you. So moving on to kind of this frequent faces of the criminal justice system, that was a discussion that's kind of popped up. I might ask Kristen to just mention that briefly, and we'll see if there's any follow-up concern or question. And again, then we'll move on to just general topics from other members joining.
And Lori, we will get to you. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lori. Kristen,
Oh,
hold on. Let me get to Lori, actually, before we start that. I'm sorry, Lori. Why don't you've got the floor or the
No,
screen.
I actually think that my input would be more appropriate after what Kristen's going to talk about.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Kristen, back to you.
Okay, this is just another idea I had. Like the homeless community, we have run some data looking at who our frequent users of the criminal justice system are from, and I can't remember if it's within like 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. And the idea behind that is to look at who these folks are and why we keep seeing them again, and trying to get to the root cause of why these folks keep entering our system, and seeing if we can throw services, employees, assistance into addressing the root cause of why people keep coming back, because I'm sure they don't want to. And so that's just a general idea I had as well. And I'm going to let Lori follow up because I think I know what she's going to say as well.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, so as an active member of the community and the folks that I work with in the criminal justice system, the big part that I'm seeing so we all know that I am all peer support, and I know that peer support fills all the gaps through all of the intercepts, from pre-diversion to re-entry. What I'm seeing the most is there are a lot of folks who are right on task, right? They're going through their programming and everything is good, but there is a large population that I'm running into who has been released from jail, who are recommitting. I listen to my scanner all the time. I'm seeing the impact that it's having. It's going to be a mess when everything comes back. The folks that I'm talking to, there's lack of support from beginning to end. There needs to be a program, and there is a program becoming in place where somebody is hooked up with a peer supporter, somebody who knows the shit, who knows the lifestyle, who knows the fear, that can meet them and walk them through no matter what. The ones who are coming out of treatment court and are scared to death because their accountability is going away. The folks who are coming out of pre-release who, oh my gosh, I haven't been to Walmart to buy toilet paper for my own home in an X number of years, who get out and there's no support for them. I'm a little disappointed in the mental health system right now, because there's that lack of support, and I'm seeing people fall because I work so much with that vulnerable population, and I'm seeing them come in and join that vulnerable population. And so there's a lot of programs that I've been working on and with that addresses this problem. I'm trying actively to get peer support as part of programming into the treatment courts. I don't know if the judge has heard that part yet. I just met with Jeff Kendricks this week. Also, you know, I'm very big part of Partners for Reintegration and have established good communication and good relationships with a lot of people. And those agencies, back to the MacArthur Foundation, I think that peer support as part of that program is very necessary. I think it's time to get that active. There's a lot of people who are not attached to agencies, and peer support right now is only addiction or mental health. You know, people who are forced to go through treatment. After treatment, they leave the programming, right? So there's a troop of people, there's a troop of peer supporters who are ready to get on board, who are trained and will be trained in forensic peer support. I'm asking for support for that. I know that my vision is huge in my head. I don't have eloquent ways of putting out my ideas and my visions, but you guys all are familiar with me. You're all familiar with my work, who I work with, the successes that I'm seeing, because people are having continued support outside of the criminal justice system, outside of agencies, who are there, who are not going to leave, who know the language, knows the fear, knows the experience. So,
Lori, I might just back that up with just a little bit of science and data showing that one of the biggest deterrents to recidivism is housing support and peer support specialists. So we need you guys.
You know, once people get housed, that's a great thing. That is a huge thing. But the fear attached to having a home when you're not used to it, I'm seeing failure everywhere. It's such an easy fix. To me, it's very easy fix. Thanks, you guys.
So Lori, I think you bring up some great points. So you mentioned reentry, and I know that we are sorely lacking in kind of a more formalized reentry program. And Kim might let us know if there's any progress being made through Department of Corrections that we could partner with just to help ease those reentry issues. Certainly the peer support, as Kristen mentioned, is essential really in today's world for the follow-up. And I know that you're training people to be peer support specialists. And I know that you're probably doing it on kind of a shoestring. And so I don't know if you have the ability to forward some kind of a proposal to help you expand that program so that more peer support specialists could be available. But I think that we would be very interested in trying to incorporate that into a future grant. So Kim, do you want to let us know a little bit more? And then I'll move to, we probably don't have a whole lot more that I should be asking people to weigh in on, but open it up. But go ahead and maybe you could let us know what's happening with reentry.
Sure. You know, I think the reentry really is at the IPPO level, the institutional probation and parole officers, and you know, there's some case management involvement from the case managers at the prison, but they are tasked a lot more nowadays with actually providing groups within the prisons. So that has, I think, removed a bit of support that way in terms of reentry. So it really does come down to the IPPOs. Through Partners for Reintegration and Welcome Back and Lori, we got a little bit of in-reach happening, and it looked like it was starting to get some momentum where we had some folks going to the prison from Missoula for those that were discharging balance suspended, which means they weren't coming through a center, and people that were more higher risk, higher needs, and where their residence, they had a residence that they were going to, but it wasn't going to be like a long-term residence. It was a residence that was going to be workable to get the person out of the prison, but we definitely would want someone to be looking at something, a little more stable and healthier. So I think that started to get a little bit of traction. Hope to continue that. But COVID blows everything up. So that's kind of where we're at. We have transition assistance funding that we're able to use so that we can get folks deposits and pay rent. There's also the housing vouchers that was transitioned over to us that provides for 3 months of rent. Our transitional assistance funding actually pays for other things outside of just rent, and we can pay for evaluations. We can pay for sometimes we can pay for meds. There's just a variety of things that we can do with that. Those things get identified also with the IPPOs and sometimes with the case managers inside the facilities. They're identified at the pre-release before people, exit there fully to come back to us. So, I think, and Lori and I have had this conversation several times, and I mean, cards on the table for me, because what I focus on so much more is out here in the community, obviously. I'm actually not as concerned about the reentry piece as I am for the I'm on supervision piece. Everybody that comes out of the prison they have something. They're scratching it together for sure. And we can always, find ways to improve that part of the equation. But where I see and where Lori sees issues, and I know Sue sees it too, because she probably has folks that come back and talk to her or talk to her staff when they're out on supervision. We really have our at-risk folks are when they first start violating. When they come out, whether they come on supervision from just court. And that, I think, is where we have to, as a system, the interventions have to get better. And, we have people that using is one of the first things they're going to do. I mean, that is, we're dealing with people that have substance use disorders and mental health issues. No one is not going to use while they're on supervision. That is an unrealistic goal. It's an unrealistic expectation from anybody that works with somebody in the system. And I think that is personally for me where I have been putting my focus as I work with folks that, officers in the field. I know that reentry is really catchy, but I really worry about the folks that, and you're seeing them as well in court, that are there for revocations. They generally aren't there for revocations because something in reentry went wrong. They've already re-entered, they've been doing something working, succeeding for a little while, and then kind of wheels are coming off. And I do think, just from earlier comments, and I've been thinking about it kind of this whole meeting, as a criminal justice system, I think we also have to talk about how are we responding to possessions? Criminal possession of dangerous drugs is something that is actually, I think, creating a large backup in the system. There are a lot of possession charges that are pending right now. And for our population on supervision, we've got those three categories of people: parolees, conditional releasees, and probationers. So we have the conditional releasees and the parolees who have different people that have jurisdiction over them, the board and the DOC. And new crimes tend to be that thing that I think community-wide we hear, oh my God, somebody's committed new crimes. Well, a lot of the new crimes are possessions. And I think that as a criminal justice system, we have to start looking at what does it mean because somebody has a possession? How do we intervene with that? Does somebody have to be in jail because that's their new crime, even when they're on supervision? Now, there can be a lot of behaviors that are happening along with that for sure. Like we all know that things can get kind of complicated, but it leads me into one of the places where I know my agency has to get better. And I think that in general, the criminal justice system has to get better, which is truly understanding and getting education about substance use disorder. Our rules and our systems, our conditions are built on somebody's not going to use. They're actually not built on that somebody is going to use. They're not built on much allowances in there for that. And we've got to start learning the difference between somebody who is using and is truly a risk to other people, or is using and is truly just a risk to themselves, and how to truly intervene with that. Because those are two different tracks that happen with people that are on supervision. Not every single person who uses will hurt somebody. Now, they need to be intervened with because ultimately they will start doing things that we all know happens, theft and those kinds of things. But that's a very long way of saying reentry is something that I think that we have a decent grasp on, that we can always get better with, especially with tribes and tribal nations. I think that is somewhere where we are still severely lacking because we have good outreach with one tribe, and obviously is a very awesome link for that. But we have 6 nations that are sovereign. And from a supervision perspective, it's incredibly challenging to work a case together, and I think that we suffer for that. So I just put that out there. I think that COVID has actually allowed us to take a real good look at, do we need to resume some things we were doing before that were probably just more knee jerk? We just did it every day. And I think that's the piece for me that I've seen in 20 years of doing this. Substance use disorders in combination, of course, when people are co-occurring, it just exacerbates it, but specifically with SUD, If we don't become more intelligent as a criminal justice system on how to truly intervene and deal with those things and not completely continue to criminalize it over and over again when it happens, we will continue to have people who end up in and out of our systems multiple times, whether it's, I mean, Sue's seen it. Sue has seen people come through her pre-release multiple times. And you're looking at it going, holy beans, you know, the person's coming back to us for possession. And sometimes I don't know that we need to intervene to that level, but I understand why we do, because there's so few resources across the state, especially at the misdemeanor level. And I've heard multiple times and on our jail review where, you know, it's like, we just know that they're going to get a felony and you guys are going to be able to get them treatment. And while I appreciate that, it also is sad. But it's a glaring problem that we have across the state of Montana. So I talked way too much. So that's all
right, Kim. So now I'm going to shut you off. Yes, that's right.
Cut me off.
Okay. So I note that Nathaniel Campfield was working on some, I guess, re-entry things. Nathaniel, I note that you've put in chat. I appreciate those efforts. I'm going to maybe turn to some other folks because we're running out of time, but we will reach out, I guess, to make certain we're aware of all that work, and congratulations on getting a grant. Maria, you had your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, on the heels of what Kim was saying, when, you know, historically the pretrial services did so much more case management, and we had better availability to work with our pretrial folks to, you know, to focus on some of the drug use. However, lately, since I've taken over the pretrial program, I just think there's a movement where pretrial is, you know, we're kind of being stifled in how much we are allowed to get involved in what their needs are. And I agree. We pass the, you know, then they go to court and they get sentenced and they're on felony now, and they're going to use because they were using while they were on pretrial. And we've, you know, we let everyone know, and we're stopped because, you know, they're not yet convicted, which I totally get. And, you know, we want to embrace what these people need. But I really think it has gotten worse. You know, if I'm going to supervise somebody for a year and the whole time they're still using, and we report it and everyone knows, and okay, well, I can't even get the CD eval. I can only get the recommendation. I mean, we certainly want to get them put into programs to help them. And when we're lucky, we get them into an inpatient treatment program. But there is so much need. And I know when they move on, you know, if they, you know, maybe some of them do get the, they maybe are found not guilty, or their case is dismissed, or they plead out to a lesser of a misdemeanor, or they move on and have to go over to felony probation. Whatever the outcome is, they're still struggling. And when I go get people out of jail on direct placements, I go get more people out of jail that need right then to go into some type of, you know, inpatient mental health where they can just for a week or two just, you know, be okay, have medical, have peer support, have the needs of some of these people getting out of jail are just, and Judge, you know, I'm talking to the choir. Right. So there's a lot.
Yep, it is a difficult issue. So Anna, it looks like you're back on. I don't know if you have additional things to say. I should open it up to public comment because we're running out of time. And so I do want to encourage people to raise your hand, send me a chat, or do something so I can identify you. But Anne, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we sure can.
Oh, what do you know? I had to have the app. I'll be fast, but you've probably talked way beyond this issue. But I think Judge Halligan made the connection to MLP, and I think that our holistic defense program at the Tribal Defender's Office is right on target with what you're speaking of. So holistic defense is a model of providing public defender services that has 4 basic tenets. One is seamless access to services for the people we serve, dynamic interdisciplinary communication among our staff, an interdisciplinary skill set, seems really on target with MLP. And then what's really important is a robust understanding and connection to the community served. So at the Tribal Defenders, what that became then is we have in-house case management, psychology. We have the Flathead Reservation Reentry Program in our office, which is a different concept than many reentry programs. It's a supportive services program for those people returning to the Flathead Reservation. And we've had a good collaboration with the Montana Department of Corrections. Most recently, we've worked it out so that our case managers will be able to appear at parole hearings at the Board of Pardons and Parole to talk about resources that are available in the community, because one of the things that happens is people are required to access resources and before they can get out on parole, and the resources aren't there. So we're trying to assist with that. What we're hoping to do through a nonprofit that we developed in Missoula, one of the founders being Maylin Smith, who's also in the meeting, we created a nonprofit to basically replicate the Tribal Defender's Office in Missoula, and it's called the Louise Burke Center for Holistic Representation. Once it is funded, what we're hoping to do is to assist Native people and provide public defender services in a holistic way in Missoula. We think that may address disparity in the system. I think that when we talk about disparity, it's a pretty complicated issue. And I think when we talk about recidivism, it's a very complicated issue. Recidivism has everything to do with the underlying issues that bring our clients into the criminal justice system, and then all those collateral consequences to being charged with a crime or convicted of a crime. That both of those things just keep people cycling through the system. And so recidivism, of course, is going to be a result of that. How implicit bias plays into that, I don't think we have the data yet to have those answers. But when Kim was speaking about substance use disorders and co-occurring, that's something our clients struggle with all the time. We're trying to assist people to address that. Lori was talking about homelessness. People can't stabilize their lives without homes. So we're trying to pull together resources as much as we can. We believe that addressing life outcomes is just as important as addressing recidivism, especially when substance use is criminalized. And you know, one solution when we're talking about how to address with possessions, if we're talking about dreams and aspirations, one thing would be to deal with substance use disorders as a public health issue, not a criminal justice issue. But that's my 2 cents for coming in late. Thanks, you guys.
Sure. So, Anne, I guess it sounds to me like much of what we've talked about with regard to Native American diversion is kind of what you have in place. So perhaps we can continue our conversation to see if we can be a partner with regard to that and use your expertise in the Missoula area to help us with that. So I know there must be others with public comment. If you'd like to unmute yourself and tell us your name or a comment. David Wall, I see your hand. Feel free.
Thanks, Judge Halligan. I appreciate it. I just have a couple quick questions. I don't want to take a lot of time. First of all, we have had to try to keep people out of the detention center because of COVID. And I see this as a pretty good natural experiment. I just wondering during this time, if we even know, has there been an effect on the crime rate? Do we feel like our community's been less safe? Maybe that would be something that's rather telling. Another thing is we've been dealing a lot with people who are in the criminal justice system who should not be in the criminal justice system, and which I think is just fantastic because there's so many people like that. But as far as reducing jail population as a goal, maybe we can also talk about actually reducing crime. Are there communities across the country who have been successful at reducing crime, and can we use those as, over the long run? And can we use those as a model to also help that situation? So just those two quick questions. Thank you all very much.
So David, we're not going to get to kind of our jail initiatives, but part of our jail initiatives has resulted in some more restrictive admission policies for detention. So at this point, primarily felony offenders and people who have victims against other people, so assaults and those kinds of things, are really the folks that are now going to detention, and many other people are being diverted out. So we are continuing to do that research. I don't think that we've had enough time, nor do we have the resources to really effectively and legitimately assess how has it affected our criminal rates. We have seen some reductions, but that's very anecdotal, and we'll continue to look at, I guess, the effect of this overall. But thank you for raising those questions. We are trying to improve public safety while implementing these initiatives. Other public comment? And if you can't raise your hand, please just unmute yourself. Tell us who you are. So Laurel, you had a comment. We have maybe 1 minute or so for your comment. Oh, yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who provided comment and asked good questions. I think that there's a lot of overlap in a shared understanding that there are some pretty large unmet needs when it comes to substance abuse, mental health issues, and then how those intersect with racial equity. And I will be really curious to hear sort of two different tracks that solutions could go. And one is much more of an emphasis on agencies, specifically agencies that exist within the criminal legal system as the appropriate people to address those concerns. And another would be focusing more on completely diverting those services and those interventions to exist in completely different agencies or completely within the public. And I think that it will be really important for the council and for stakeholders to really think about what authentic involvement looks like for peer support specialists, for people involved in the system, for family members of people involved in the system, and the BIPOC community, and what sharing power really looks like, and the difference between offering public comment, having at-large positions that are non-voting on the council, and other ways that really value the needs and voices of impacted people as much as we value really important data to make sure that things are evidence-based, which is really important, but kind of valuing those more on an even foot, and trusting that agencies have played their role and will continue to, I'm sure, but trusting that impacted folks and impacted communities really have the solutions for what they've been experiencing, and a lot of them are already addressing those outside of agencies. So I'm really encouraged to hear the overlap, and that in a lot of ways we are seeing eye to eye, and there's a lot of momentum right now. And I will be really happy to reach out and connect to folks and work with everyone here to see if we can, really improve the authenticity of involvement and the voices we include. So thank you for letting me jump in, and thank you for participating today.
Thank you, Laurel. So I just wanted to mention that the jail review team does meet weekly, and we'll be meeting again kind of more in person via a Zoom connection today. So we do continue to review those cases. There are statistics posted on the Missoula County website if you're interested in kind of the statistical analysis. There are current admission policies, as I mentioned before, that essentially are more restrictive. I don't, and we are trying to do some alternatives, treatment court and contempt, so we can address those things at a future agenda. I don't know if there are any other public comment or media questions. We can probably go a little bit longer, just to make sure that everyone's had a chance to say something if they wish to. So I don't see much. I have tried to put my email and Kristen's email in the chat. We are both public employees, and so you can find us as well on the public sites, mt.gov for me and Missoula Counties for Kristen.
Judge?
Yes.
Apologies. We've got Charles Bolte from Montana Public Radio who has a few questions if there's still time.
Sure. So Charles?
Hi, this is Charles. I go by Charlie, person
Thank
to
you,
person,
Charlie.
but yeah, Charles is my byline. Thanks for holding the meeting, and glad to be here. I was just curious to know, I just recently published a story about impacts on the criminal justice system through YPR and through NTPR. I'm not sure how many people had time to listen to that or even knew of it, but I've done a little bit of a pinwheel or roundup of other detention facilities around the state. And what I'm finding is that perhaps, Missoula County's resolution 2020-29, blocking misdemeanor, nonviolent misdemeanor offenders and failures to appear, I believe, to, blocking them from entering the detention facility. I just wanted to double check if that was still in place, and, how important that is, that resolution stays in place in the future, even as the pandemic hopefully winds down and we're able to move on from this time.
So Charles, my understanding is that resolution is still in place. There was one concern that I think that justice courts who are doing DUI second and third offenses, because those are misdemeanor offenses, they were having difficulties allowing anyone for purposes of sanctioning to be placed in jail. So there have been some very slight modifications that would allow jail as a sanction for an individual in a treatment court that had essentially reached that level of sanctioning based on violations of the treatment court obligations. But other than that, I believe that the initiative remains unchanged. I do believe that it is our council's, we haven't particularly done a vote, but my sense is that the council continues to be very supportive of that moving forward, even after the COVID issues subside. And so we are looking to use jail for high-risk offenders, people who have injured people or are alleged to have injured people in the community who are a higher public safety risk. That doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't continue to address the issues that have been raised, such as criminalizing possession, as Kim Laeth had mentioned, and others. Certainly as a judge, I see many requests for revocation based on use and testing positive for substances. And it is very difficult for individuals, one, to get to a point of sobriety and maintain that. And the justice response isn't perhaps as effective as I would like it to be. So I'm just speaking on kind of my own with regard to that. I do think it's an issue that we will need to address. Did you have other questions?
Yeah, I certainly do, if you're willing to answer. I was wondering if anybody knows the current detention facility inmate population off the top of their head for today. I'm trying to do some follow-up numbers, finding some numbers to lay out how brief was the dip in inmate populations across the state at county jail levels? And what I'm seeing maybe is that it has been through March and April and May, and that some jails across the state are returning to pre-pandemic levels already. And I was curious to know if that's what we're seeing at the Missoula County Detention Facility.
So I'll let Kristen weigh in, or Quinn Ziegler's on the line, and he does all of our data. I do not believe that we have had a substantial change in our data. I think, are still kind of hovering where we were. But Quinn, if you're on and can answer that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is Quinn Ziegler, the data analyst for the CJCC.
So we can't hear you too well, Quinn. Can you speak up a bit?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is this better?
Better.
Okay. So yeah, certainly with COVID, we saw a dramatic reduction in our jail population. We hit our low point around mid-April, I believe April 10th. For inmates sort of under the jurisdiction of the county, we hit a daily population on April 10th of, I believe, about 97 inmates. Since that point, we really have seen a sort of slow but steady increase. So I'm trying to get you the numbers quickly today, but in general, in June, in the late part of May, we sort of ticked back up to the mid 130s, occasionally hitting the low 140s. So that's still well below our pre-COVID levels. But in terms of growth, we certainly have seen a good amount of growth since our low point in mid-April.
And Quinn, can you just tell Charlie what the kind of population typically had been prior to all of this?
Yeah, prior to COVID, we were sort of sitting around the mid 180s for an average daily population, and that's for county folks who are under the county's jurisdiction. That doesn't include folks who are at the detention center who might be there through the mask program or were there as a result of a federal hold.
And Charlie, the mask program would be individuals who have been sentenced to the Department of Corrections and who are awaiting screening for placement in one of the corrections programs.
Yeah, and Charlie, just to follow up, I was able to pull it up quickly. So our daily population today is sitting at 139 for folks who are under the county's jurisdiction.
Yeah, it seems relative to other county jails and the county jurisdiction inmates there that Missoula County's growth would be slower. Is anyone able to speak to why that might be? Is it because of this resolution 2020-29 that other counties haven't implemented a similar shift in policy, or is there something else going on?
So Charlie, I'm not going to answer that because I think if I tried to, I would be mistaken. I don't think I know enough about the other jurisdictions to do a comparison, but I can tell you from the Missoula County kind of perspective that I do think that this memorandum has had an impact and continues to have an impact.
Thank you very much, Judge Halligan.
So as you can see, we've kind of overrun our time by 15 minutes. If you would like to stay on, you're welcome to do that. But perhaps formally, we will close. I'm happy to answer some additional questions. Our next meeting will be in August. We are working to try to set up a regularly scheduled meetings, such as the last Friday of each month, but we have not been successful doing that quite yet. So we will publicize our next meeting. It will be in August. It will likely be toward the end of August. So if you're interested, please join us back again. And again, our email addresses have been posted and are available. Feel free to email us at any time. And thank you all for your participation.
Right.
Adios. Have a nice afternoon. It's beautiful outside.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Is Quinn still on the line? This is Charles Bolte with Montana Public Radio.
Charlie, he is still on the line. So if you want
Yeah.
some additional questions, go for it.
Do you have to leave soon? Are you on your way out?
I have just another meeting for jail review. When does that start?
Oh.
Soon, right?
That's at 1, so there's lunchtime.
We have till 1 o'clock.
Okay. I won't take that long. I was just curious to know about the dashboard, the jail dashboard on the CJCC website, Quinn.
Yeah.
You know, one way that I've been mining data out of that is to just make the date range a single day. And I have noticed that it says average population. So I was curious to know if the data entry for what's represented on that chart is like day by day numbers, or is it week by week, or something like that. I was wondering if you could just tell me what's going on under the hood with the data on that dashboard.
Yeah, so it's going to depend on, I'm not sure exactly which visualization you're looking at, but I can tell you what's going on in both. So I'm just going to pull it up for myself here quickly.
Yeah, sure. Let me actually. Oh, I guess I closed that tab. Yeah, I was looking at the, I think it's slide 2 of 5, the MCDF daily population.
Yep, and so so the top chart there that says daily population, that is exactly that. It is population by day.
Okay.
So if you hover over it, it should give you the specific date and what the daily population is for that day.
Okay.
For the chart below, it says average daily population by month. So for example, if you go to the last month, it'll give you a date of Friday, May 1st, 2020. That's just sort of a limitation of the program. That's really representing the whole month of May. It's not May 1st. It's just sort of a workaround that I had to implement based on the software. But that's saying for every day in May, so May 1st through May 31st, if you took all those days and got the population for each day and averaged them across those 31 days, on average, there was 121.3 people incarcerated.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, thank you for clearing that up. I can mine the data a lot better by just dragging my mouse across the top daily population graph and actually getting the exact number. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Sure. Yeah, I know that can be a little confusing. Unfortunately, it's a limitation of the software that we use, but I might provide a note. I appreciate your comment that there might be confusion for other folks as well.
Yeah, I guess I think I maybe actually never like scrolled my mouse over the upper sections and just never even realized that data would appear if I did. But yeah, I feel like that's more on me, but feel free to post any guidance for others.
Worries. Do you have any other questions that I can help you with?
Is the data, like the June data, posted on July 1st or at the end of June, or is it updated more regularly?
Yeah, so it's posted as close as possible to the start of the next month. So yeah, so as close as possible to July 1st. My process is I have to extract the data from our jail database management system. I then go through and do some cleaning of the data just to make sure that the data is suitable for analysis. They're checking for internal validity, and then doing some categorization. So the filters that you see on the page, such as legal status or highest charge, those aren't fields that are immediately available in the jail data. So I need to create those based off of other fields. So I go through that cleaning process, and depending on workload, that can take a day or two. So So I try and pull the data as quickly as possible. Once the month has concluded, I go through the cleaning process and try and get it up within the first couple days of the next month. So
Okay,
June.
great.
So yeah, you should expect June data. You know, we do have the long holiday next week, so you know, there's a potential it might not be available until the following Monday.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for that update. I think just getting today's population was really helpful for the data graphic that I'm producing on my end for a follow-up story. So thanks for providing that.
Yeah. In terms of some of the more basic statistics, you know, without the different population breakdowns, we have some tools that we can get that information really quickly. So that sort of information, if you're interested, I can certainly get you more quickly.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot.
Do we have any other comments from media or the public before we end this meeting officially? Looks like Judge Halligan's had to take a call. I see Tessa Nadeau on. Tessa, did you have any comments that you wanted to make today? Okay. I think that we are going to officially end this meeting. Thank you all for your participation.
Thank you so much for the extra time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, Charlie. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for hanging in there.